Eye Contact, a Mark Manning Mystery, Book 2. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Aust. Manning checks his watch. It's 3:30 already. He's wasted the middle of the day standing on the curb outside police headquarters. He asked Arlen Farber, "Hold this, will you?" Farber takes the handle of the zippered nylon carrying case and is surprised by its weight. Packed inside is Manning's computer, charger, modem, disks, and an assortment of file folders. Farber says, "You don't exactly travel light, do you?" "That's just the half of it," says Manning, patting his jacket. "I've still got my phone, pager, and pocketfuls of notes. Then I ought to get organized, but there's been no time." He doesn't need to mention that he carries his pet fountain pen, the antique Mont Blanc, clipped to the inside breast pocket of his blazer. "Where to now?" asked Farber, positioning the strap of the case over his shoulder. "If we can get a cab, and that's a big if, I'd like to head over to the stadium and cruise around a bit. I want to see firsthand what's happening there, and there's a long shot I might spot Jim. Then we'll drive back to the planetarium." He steps off the curb into the street and tries hailing a cab that's working its way through the traffic. This may take a while. The streets seem crowded all over the city. Everyone's outdoors today, and many need cabs to the stadium. Manning has mixed feelings about his own car, which he didn't even try to retrieve from the Mid-America building. Assuming he should steer clear of the place after what happened to David. If he had the car now, he and Farber would be on their way, but there would be nowhere to park it. When they arrived at the stadium, it's much too far to walk, so the only solution is a taxi, and one of them just cruised by, packing shoulder to shoulder with passengers. Manning's only option is to venture further into the street and keep waving. It was bad enough getting here from the Gethsemane Arms. Throngs of the righteous were gathering noisily, the voice of intolerance preparing to march, raising a war cry against the forces of Sodom. Some of the marchers had stayed at the hotel, but most were converging from elsewhere in the city, so there were plenty of cabs available as they arrived to disgorge the placard-hoisting moralists. Funny, Manning thought, watching them step from their taxis. Most of them looked like ordinary folk, people with whom he might have grown up. What happened to them? Where did they get their goofy ideals, their irrational sense of certitude? What kind of brainwashing has transformed these probably decent people into a mob of narrow-minded zealots? These questions, Manning knows, are purely rhetorical. He knows exactly what force has robbed these people of their innate ability to think straight. He knows exactly what force has clouded their reasoning and stolen a slice of their very humanity. They have been infected by the force of religion. To their credit, though, they delivered an abundance of empty cabs, so Manning hopped into one with Farber, telling the driver to take them down to police headquarters. The ride, which should have taken about 20 minutes, took more than an hour and cost Manning the remaining bills in his wallet, so he replenished his funds with a stop at a cash machine before ducking inside headquarters with Farber. Hoping to catch his detective friend on the run, it wasn't meant to be, though. Jim wasn't there. He hadn't returned since Manning called around noon. With everyone so busy with the president's visit, the offices were in the grip of bureaucratic deadlock, manned by assistants and other underlings, who seemed confused at best. The urgent pleas of a reporter to tell a tale of murder were met with a stack of forms to fill out and an endless wait on a bench in a hall. Disgusted, Manning decided his time would be better spent doing some sleuthing of his own. So he nudged Farber, who dozed next to him on the bench, telling him, "Let's get out of here." Standing in the street now, he waves at a cab in the distance, and this one at last switches lanes to pull over and pick him up. Moments later, he and Farber jump into the back seat. Manning tells the driver, "Stadium, please." The cabbie nods, saying nothing. He could easily guess their destination. As the cab nudges its way into the congested traffic, Manning turns in his seat to zip open the computer case and dig out a folder. As he glances out the rear window, something catches his eye. A familiar figure, lanky and cat-like in his Ray-Bans, has just rushed out of the building and limped to the curb. Frantically hailing a cab several car lengths behind them, under his breath, Manning asks, "Hmm?" Farmer turns to him. "Oh, what?" "Take a look," says Manning, jerking his head over his shoulder. "It's our pal, Victor Etley. He just flounced out of the cop shop. Do you suppose he was there on business of his own? Or was he following us?" "Way down there?" asked Roxanne. "I'm impressed, Neil." Roxanne, Neil, and Claire have arrived at the stadium, worked their way through the main entrance, passed through the metal detectors, and followed directions to the gate that takes them inside the arena itself. They stand at the top of a steep aisle that leads down past many rows of seats, hundreds, it seems, to a special seating area on the field. Neil has secured passes for an enviable block of seats, only 8 rows from the stage. "You may weld clouted Zazas, Rox, but this is my domain, at least for today. I deserve some special treatment. I've worked my butt off for over a year on this project." Roxanne glances behind him, eyeing his derriere. "It's still there," she assures him, "and it's fetching as ever." "Thank you," he says dryly. "Shall we descend through the masses, ladies?" They begin the long trek toward the field, stepping past row after row of spectators who form giant concentric rings of fluttering color. The rings grow tighter with each step downward, until at last the threesome has arrived on the ground. From that perspective, the sky has been reduced to a luminous blue, circular ceiling as if painting there in the manner of an old movie palace. Wisp of a few unthreatened clouds drift silently eastward. From huge stainless steel poles topping the aisles, flags of every nation snap in the warm July breeze. "Here we are," says Neil, finding their row. "Those must be ours." He points to a section of 6 empty seats, conspicuous among the crowd, which by now is packed tight, numbering nearly 100,000. As they excuse themselves and sidestep past other seated spectators, Claire comments, "What a pity that the others will miss this city." Neil sighs. Who knows? Maybe they'll see it on TV. He can't shake the uneasiness of finding the loft trashed, and he's still plenty angry about Manning's episode with David. He knows, though, that Manning would have enjoyed today's ceremonies, and he's proud to have helped make this happen. He's proud to have secured this seating. They wouldn't have gotten nearly so close if they'd relied on Manning's press connections. This is Neil's day to shine, and Manning's not here to share it. Yes, Manning is involved with an important story, but Neil knows only too well in the final analysis that Manning isn't here today because Neil walked out on him. Neil made a show of smashing a crystal glass on the floor. Neil called him a son of a bitch. Neil tells the others, "At least we have the luxury of a little elbow room." They arrange themselves with Neil in the middle. There are 2 empty seats next to Claire, one next to Roxanne. Claire tells the others, "There's plenty of room here for our sweaters, if you'd care to pass them over." Which they do. Then Roxanne offers, "I can keep an eye on the purses over here." Claire passes her purse to Roxanne, thanking her, but Neil tells her, "I forgot mine." Roxanne jabs his rib with her elbow. Claire squints at her watch. The sun glares on its too tiny face. She asks, "What time do you have, Neil?" He checks. 4:40. Only 20 minutes to go. Having been involved with much of the planning, I'm sure the program will begin at the stroke of 5 precisely. It's funny. I spent a heap of time on all this, but it's out of my hands now. Even so, I'm a nervous wreck. Discovering the intrusion of his home hasn't helped either. Claire laughs. "That will pass, dear, as soon as things get underway. I've sat through enough opening nights to know exactly what you're feeling." She pats his arm. "And believe me, I sympathize. It's a long show, isn't it?" "Right," Neil tells her. "It's a 4-hour program, so it has to move like clockwork. The president doesn't finish till 9, and then the Sky Show begins. We're not certain how long that will last. It's all been so hush-hush. But by then, it won't matter. It'll all be over." "God, Neil," says Roxanne through a chortle, "you make it sound like doomsday." She snaps open her purse and puts on a big pair of rose-tinted sunglasses. Outside the stadium, Manning and Farber scan the crowds from the back seat of their cab. which moves at a crawl. The driver asked, "Want me to drop you here? We're not going to get much closer, and the meter's pushing $50. They've wasted another hour in traffic, and Manning checks his wallet before answering. "Nope," he says, confident he won't need to visit another cash machine. Just keep going. We won't be getting off here anyway." The driver looks over his shoulder as if Manning must be nuts. Manning fans the cash from his wallet, jerking his head onward toward the stadium. The cabbie shrugs, returns his eyes to the road, and drives forward, deeper into the crowd. Farber is half asleep, but tries to appear alert, assisting Manning in his search, although he wouldn't recognize Jim, Manning's detective friend, even if he saw him. Manning's gaze darts through the crowd, from face to face, but he knows, of course, that the odds of actually finding Jim are infinitesimal. Jim could be anywhere in the city at this moment, and even if he happened to be out here, working the throng, Manning could not reasonably hope to find him. What Manning hopes, in fact, is to spot Neil, even if only in passing, only through a glimpse. Manning wants to see with his own eyes that Neil is safe, that he made it here to this event, the opening of a festival that he's worked so hard to create. He knows that Neil will be with Roxanne and Claire, with Carl and Hector, too, he presumes. So Manning is searching for any of those 5 faces, but it's Neil's face he wants to see, and he wonders what that face will tell him. Will Neil be giddy with the excitement of the day? He certainly deserves to be. Or will his happiness be overruled by the tyranny of emotions that forced him away from the loft to stay with Roxanne? And what if Manning were to beat the odds and actually see him here? What would he do? Stop the cab, elbow through the crowd, drop to his knees, and make a scene that would only humiliate Neil? Dashing any possibility of reconciliation. This is absurd, Manning tells himself. Yes, he has hurt Neil. Yes, he wants him back. He wants things the way they were, but he's not going to achieve that here. Not now. He has already said that he's sorry, and he has tried to explain that his slip with David was partly, largely, though not altogether, beyond his control. Neil's reaction has also been partly, though not altogether, beyond his own control. Neil will have to work this out in his own mind, and that's going to take some time. Whether or not they resume a life together, the decision is now Neil's. There's nothing else Manning can do to persuade him. Manning's mind feels numbed by all this, and he realizes that his emotional state has not yet allowed him to deal with the tragedy of David's sudden death. Manning has tried for nearly a week to forget what he and David did that night, to put the experience firmly behind him, but it did happen, and it surely meant something. It was more than just a dirty little episode to be swept away and tactfully forgotten. David was a friend, a young colleague, and that night he became something else to Manning, though Manning's vocabulary is not equipped with a word to define that expanded relationship. Certainly they became more than friends, just as certainly they were much less than lovers. With time, Manning may have been able to analyze it, to define it, to reconcile it with the bedrock relationship he has worked to build with Neil, but now, of course, those issues are moot. David is gone, and for all Manning knows, Neil may be gone as well. The crowds outside the cab are starting to thin in the minutes that precede the opening of Celebration 2000. Arlen Farber has nodded off to sleep, chin to chest. Manning can afford to agonize over his emotions no longer. He tells the driver, "You can turn around now. Civic Planetarium, please." A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.